Good evening, one and all. Hey, greetings, Pantheon. How you doing, sir? And greetings, Jersey. How are you doing? We're going to be upgrading this artwork and preparing it for the next step of production. We're not going to be taking this to the art table. After all, I'm going to just be doing this in this program, and hopefully it will turn out well enough. We will wait and see. Anyway, this has been a long time coming to try and get this thing done. That's why I just need to do it like this, because I'm taking far too long, and I have to do a couple more updates to this. And based upon how the last couple of days of artwork have gone, I think that it's a fair idea to actually try and just pursue this from start to finish in this program. But we're going to be doing something before we do that. We're going to upgrade the resolution. Just increase it a little bit. All right. It has been a blustery last few days, and the temperature up here has taken a dip. We are now into fall. The leaves are starting to change colors over here, and snow is not far away. When the snow does come up here, it comes fast, and I very much do enjoy the winters up here, although I do wish that summer would last a tad bit longer. Anyway. Let me double check something before we get too much further here. Let me put this over here, and that should work just fine. All right, let's begin here. Okay. Should be working here. Okay, something glitched on my end. Oh, come on. Stop acting up. Here we go. Well, I got some stickers ordered. It's the first time I've actually done an order like that. So I'm not entirely sure how interesting they will be, but I wanted to get a couple of stickers squared away, especially as we start to get prepared for some of the more elaborate projects in the future. It'll be a good way to try and help promote some of the stuff that's coming out. All right, so we're going to start off by painting the back layer with a layer of gray. And from there, we will proceed to redraw this scene with from the ground up, basically. So like this right here turned out decent. Still doesn't quite look correct. And now based upon some past experience, I think I can probably do a little bit better than that. The end of the summer was not as productive as I would have liked. And I've encountered a level of I feel like I'm weighed down a little bit by an anchor of some kind. I'm not really sure how that whole process began, but I've been trying to break free of it. Not very effectively, unfortunately. There are times where your skills just feel like they're sapped and your energy is drained. I thankfully have not had to deal with that a whole lot in the past, but the last few months, this last year as a whole, kind of involved that quite a bit. It's a relatively new experience for me, and I'm still trying to figure out how to break free of it. Why do you need to correct? Because the line art is not prepared for the final process of coloring. You'll notice right here there's a lot of rough drawings. There's a couple down here that are really rough and whatnot. There's a couple areas that are shaded. Grass is really rough. The main character right here is more refined than not, but I still want to redo it just because I want his pose to be somewhat different. So this is not necessarily the line art itself. This is just a pose issue. This is going to be the main project for this week until it's completed. Now, there's a lot of story elements that I put into this drawing. This piece of artwork was redeemed a long time ago, and I couldn't be able to do it because a lot of the story elements had not been figured out. Now the story elements have been figured out, or at least for the most part. The actual story itself is still struggling to come out. Part of the reason why it's been a little frustrating the last few months, because I feel I don't know if I would describe it as discouragement, but a lack of energy to try and complete it. I think it's just the frustration of all the things that have kind of been happening over the last couple of years, just kind of impacting me all at once. It's not terrible. I wouldn't quite call it a midlife crisis. I would call it somewhere like maybe let's call it a midlife discouragement. That's probably a better way to put it. It does come and go, so it isn't going to like last forever. It just has kind of been lasting for this year, and I think once the first items come out, I think then I'll start to find that energy again. Just because I'll have something to kind of like say, okay, this worked or this worked. But so far, not a lot of stuff have been working as a whole, which is perfectly fine, honestly. It's not all meant to be successful. You are not guaranteed success in this life. But you got to try and do something that has meaning and worth. And that's the thing, that if I can do something where I have that sense of meaning and worth that gets returned, then I think that this stuff will start to really get traction again. Let me reposition this over here. Okay, I'm doing that so I can try and use that as my mirror, because I don't have my mirror right next to me. And honestly, I do need to get another mirror. The mirror that I currently have is kind of pitiful. I got it back in Germany back in the early 2000s, and it was just a little simple. Okay, here we go. Snip, grab that. It's a little simple mirror, and it does get the job done, but it needs to be just a little bit better. For like visuals, it's too small, and I need to get one that's like larger, like this big, where I can look at it, pose, and be able to use that as reference. Because otherwise, I have to keep moving the mirror around so I can be able to actually see my entire head. Ever use Shading Assistant? Don't think I've even heard of that. Okay, let me copy this and paste it in here. I want to be able to have this reference in here. Uh-oh. It's a rough image here, but it's enough to get the look in the eyes. So that's the real hard part for me. Yeah, I've not heard of Shading Assistant before. Doesn't mean I've never seen it. Maybe I do know about it, but not quite familiar with it off the top of my head. I've seen another artist using it yesterday in Studio Paint. Stunned. Oh, interesting. Hokey smokes. I know how they did this because there's actually a Blender system for this. I didn't realize they brought it into Clip Paint Studio. That's actually quite impressive. By the way, the Blender version was pitiful. Wasn't worth it. But this is like the exact same sort of thing. It gives a good reference. It doesn't make it perfect, but it definitely gives it, gives you like a little bit of a way to speed up that whole process. Ah, that is pretty nice. It feels like cheating. It is a little bit like cheating. But the thing is that if you use that and make your final product with it, it will feel cheap by comparison. To do authentic shading with your hand is going to be required. So when you come to the end, you still will need to just use it as a guide. You shouldn't use it as your final. You should use it as a way to kind of speed up the visualization process. But don't use it too much, because that can also mess up with your ability to see things accurately. Something that I realized when I was writing the backstory for Milo, I originally had a scar that was on Milo. I had it from the very beginning for the character, but I realized I needed to get rid of it because it needed to appear in the first story. So hopefully it will make more sense when people actually get to see the final work. I need to really take some time over this fall, really push to get the thing finished, because so much of the story is ready and good to go, and I just have to refine it a little bit. I'm in the process of adding stuff. I'm in the tail end of the first draft, and the second draft will probably take a while, and it'll probably be around the fourth draft that it finally comes out. I was originally going to keep the story under wraps completely. But then I thought that, oh, well, it's nearing the end. And then I announced it, and then I realized, oh, dang, I got a ways further to go with it. So I look forward to when the story does come out, but it is a little unfortunate. I jumped the gun on that again. It's one of the reasons why the big stories that I've been working on stay completely under wraps, because I know that if I bring it up, then, well, that will mess things up. Okay, now we bring back the character elements. So these character elements were figured out months ago, and I want to maintain the look. I just needed help with the posing. Well, come this fall, I might have to take a couple of days off of streaming as I try and figure out my computer situation. There is the end of life for Windows 10 and I hate Windows 11. I have been refusing to upgrade to it, and so I'm going to have to try and figure out a solution for that. I've been putting it off for a while because I wanted to see what Windows would do, and they have continued to abuse, and I will be swapping to Linux. But the question is, can I swap the main computer, or am I only going to be able to swap my laptop for the time being and then swap my main PC at a later date? So either way, I'm going to have to try and figure that out. That's probably going to be an October sort of situation. Maybe before then, I don't know. I'm not looking forward to this. I've mentioned about tyranny, how much I hate it. This is a form of tyranny, trying to force people onto a spyware software. And what they're doing with Windows 11 is so bad. So bad. So I refuse to jump in on that ordeal, and I'm going to be joining the group of people that resist and going to a system that, while not perfect, is at least going to adhere more to the values that I have. We'll see how that turns out. Windows is cool. It's better than Apple in many ways. I remember when I was at college, some friends of mine said, who are really tech savvy, said, "Hey, you need to get in on Linux." And I refused. I thought, that's stupid. Linux is garbage. I also said the same thing about Blender. I said the same thing about GIMP. And now I use all three of those things. Well, soon all three of those things. It's amazing how times change. Things that concern you one year don't concern you another. Typically. And I did not suspect that I would be as passionate about the whole ordeal of the spyware stuff until Adobe came along and abused it. And I was like, oh, dang, these people are serious. So I refused to add to that system. We don't want that. That's more of a tough guy stance. This is this is him telling a story, and so thus we need to maintain more of a friendly, approachable sort of face here. I wonder if using 3D Pose in the Clip Paint Studio offers considerable... if the tool is considered cheating or not, because I know artists who have mixed feelings over drawing over stuff. Drawing over stuff is not bad. I mean, people have been doing that ever since ancient times. Technically, there are some famous paintings that actually had the same sort of thing. Famous artists throughout history who used that technique, and they just didn't want people to know about it. Back in the day, they used to have a system of mirrors that would help to project stuff, or at least be really close so you could be able to use it as a guide. Yeah, they've been doing that stuff for a long time. There is a problem, though. While that works, that's more like taking a photograph. It's what you do with it. Notice what I just did with this. I kept the image over here to use as a reference. I didn't trace over it. The reason why is because then the image would look too much like myself over here, rather than the character Milo. It's designed to be a fictitious character. If it was designed to be myself, then by all means, it would be worth it to try and sketch it right over top of the photo. And I have done that in the past. Now, I try to avoid it because I like doing stylized art, meaning that no matter what sort of artwork I do, it has to have a different feel than the authentic image that is inspiring it. That is actually a good practice if you are somebody who is trying to do things that are, that are supposed to be free from any sort of copyright violation. By doing it through inspiration, it's a little bit better for you in the long term. Now, some people don't pay attention to that. Disney has gotten in trouble for that. They've used fan art that they've traced. And that's pretty sketchy because... sketchy because they're drawing. No, it's sketchy because that means that Disney has no problem with it. And then they go out and they complain when other people do something similar. Yep. I can use this hat that I originally drew. I don't think I have to redraw that one. The hat turned out pretty well. I'm still going to have to edit it later on. And I'm going to have to add a little bit more of a cartoon flair to the face here in a little bit, because it has to be done in almost like an older-fashioned comic book sort of style. It can be a little bit more refined, but just need to be careful about that. I was remembering a while back when I was doing the roleplay for Milo. There was a guy who showed up at a meetup. This was back when I was doing things with bigger names. And they showed up at the meetup, and the guy that I was doing this with and I were both there. And a fan came up, and it turns out that the people that were watching us actually were far more engaged than we thought. And what started out as kind of like an experiment soon became much bigger than that. And it actually made a couple of folks a little frustrated because we were finding success and no one thought that we would. But in the process, we had developed a small fandom. And in that fandom, one guy came up and said, hey, I really, 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 really want to get a photo of you guys in cowboy hats. And there was an area nearby where they had cowboy hats where you could put them on. And so I agreed. I said, sure, I'll go over and do the photo shoot with you. And this was a guy that wanted to do stylized photos of himself doing cosplays. And so he wanted to be in on the photo. I was all for it. And I went over to my colleague and said, hey, this guy wants to do this. Sounds like a good opportunity, especially if we hope to grow the show a little bit. And he looked at me and said something really weird. And I still am baffled as to why. He looked at me and said, no, not today, man. I was like, that's weird. It was weird because he was trying his hardest to become someone famous. I was not. I was there to help him actually become famous. And in the process, we actually had a growing fandom. And here it was an opportunity to really kind of take it to the next level by doing things like photo shoots. And it was something fairly benign, fairly neutral. And he didn't want it. Now, he wanted a lot of other things. And that was the part that kind of had me a little curious. But we missed out on that opportunity. I really wish that it had happened. Not because I wanted to necessarily have the photo for my of myself out there in the sense of that, oh, look, let's get people to tune into the show. That's not the reason. It would have been one of the only times where I would have actually gotten a photo with somebody in that group that I had spent so much time working with, and it would have been a memory. I did not have a lot of photos. I was the cameraman, for the most part. I was not in there. And a lot of the people didn't seem to want me around. And so for that, it was like the one guy that I actually would have wanted to have a photo with. And he said, no. It is perplexing. Sometimes people are going through things that you have no idea what it is. And I actually did have a little bit of an idea of what was going on in his life. But what I didn't realize was that it was impacting him far worse than anyone really knew. I still think back to that time. Could I have said something, maybe to have helped him out a bit? Maybe. Maybe not. So now Milo's supposed to be somewhere in his 40s or early 50s. He's somebody that has had a lot of experience and somebody who has not necessarily had a great journey. He's supposed to be kind of like an avatar of being able to experience the Wild West through the eyes of a merciful sort of fellow rather than a gunslinger. It's designed to help people of the modern age, you could say, understand what it was like for people back then. To understand the pros and the cons. I got to see a lot of the American West. I got to see a lot of the world, honestly. And in that whole experience, I got to learn some things about our history because I got to see it firsthand. That, that a lot of people were unaware of. Things that people used to know a lot because they would read them in their textbooks. And the times changed, and people no longer read their history books anymore. And thus, the stories of old started to disappear. And a lot of myth started to replace history. A lot of lies started to replace history. And a lot of movies started to replace our understanding of history. It's a real shame, honestly. I think that there's a lot of good things that happened in the American West. But there's a lot of people that don't know about that. They don't even know the first place kind of to begin in understanding what the American West was all about. What the pros were, what the cons were, because there were a lot of bad things that took place in the West. There's a lot of good things too. There's a lot of things also that are misunderstood. I was hoping that through the streams that I would get a chance to convey some American history as Milo went on his journey. And that actually worked out quite a bit. There's a lot of great opportunity to get to tell people stories about the American West that they were unaware about. I hope in the written narrative that it will maintain some of that. It's going to make some people frustrated. There's a lot of people that really, when it comes down to it, they're not a fan of American history. They're not a fan of American as a whole in many ways. It doesn't change the fact that there's good moments and bad moments. Just sometimes people get so hung up on the negative that they forget to look for the positive. Right now, I need to change this about, try and match the original look here a little bit more, bring that back, and now I'll go in and do these corrections. soften the stare a little bit. Hmm. I would prefer to learn about U.S. history instead of local ones. Learning about local kings and stuff from thousands of years is so time consuming, and the U.S. is only 200 years old, so no need to remember so much. That is true in some ways. In other ways, it is super complex because a lot happened in a very, very narrow amount of time. But we have a benefit. A lot of our history is sectioned off into different eras, a lot cleaner than other countries. We have the Revolutionary War period. We have the age of the first pioneers. We had the American Civil War. We had the Gold Rush eras, the World Wars, Cold War, the modern era. A lot of it's sectioned off fairly cleanly, and it helps out with trying to memorize stuff. The U.S. is a fascinating place. I don't think we actually have enough appreciation these days for what a very wildly different place this is. And I used to not have much of an appreciation for it until I kind of started becoming an adult. And then I started noticing how few people actually knew our own history. A lot of people studied only the sciences. They said, what's the use of learning all that history nonsense? That's pointless. And now we're doomed to repeat history. A lot of bad things happen when you don't study your history, or if you try and twist it. And that's another thing. There's a lot of people out there that have been twisting American history. It's infuriating because it's like a lot of it's very well documented. We had a lot of historians who recorded both good and bad things about the U.S., and we need to remember that history. And right now, people are more consumed with the idea of trying to forget it. And I don't see that turning out well. It's frustrating. It shouldn't be mandated. It shouldn't be mandatory, at least, like if I care what king and dynasty and with what borders ruled in 1100. And that makes sense, but it also can be an important history lesson on what can happen when people take certain actions. Let me mention it this way. Americans are very conservationist oriented. We have a desire to want to protect the ecosystem that we have. Now, some people take it to the extreme. Some people almost treat it like, oh, Mother Earth, we've got to protect Mother Earth. Others of us think, hey, we got to protect it because our history says we can destroy it if we're not careful. And the American West is actually an example of that. We almost destroyed the buffalo. We hunted it almost to extinction. That bit of our history has made it so that we've been very careful about our species ever since. Not a lot of animals have gone extinct in North America compared to other parts of the world, in a large part because this is so ingrained in our culture. We got to see massive herds, millions strong, of buffalo. And within a single generation, that number almost got destroyed completely. Now it's taught to us, so that way we make sure that we never make that mistake again. Some people don't care. Some people are still going out and they're like, whatever. And that becomes a problem. Doesn't matter what's their background. There's people from all backgrounds that kind of think that way. All right, that turned out much better in my personal opinion. Still got to cartoonize that a little bit more, but that's at least a start. Oh, forgot about this. This goes down actually a wee bit more, because he's tilting his head. History is one of the most useful and can sometimes dull subjects you can have. But it's amazing how useful it can be, especially if you're in a field that is in the world of industry, culture, military, basically anything, but those ones in particular. Historians who are military officers, for example, many times understand something about terrain that is centuries old, and they've studied it, so thus they understand that there is like certain advantages. There's some people who have an economic background, and they look at it and think, hey, based upon history, this place has experienced this or that, and that influences them. Some people are politicians, and they think about, sadly, how to exploit other people groups because of history. Yeah, there's some people that do use it in a negative way, but there's others that look at it and say, hey, you know what, we got a problem here. Historically, this place is known for drought, and maybe there's a moment in history where somebody experienced the drought really severely and it becomes an area of study, and one day we actually figure out what caused it, and thus we're able to make plans to help mitigate that problem in the future. History is by far the most, I would say, one of the most important things one can study. But there's a trivial side of that too. Memorizing every last historic figure, not beneficial. Knowing a couple of key historic figures is beneficial. Here in the U.S., we study about Daniel Boone, for example. That's actually a very key figure in American history. There's some people, they study the life of George Washington because of his importance, but there's some people, but that guy's like super well known. Some of the less known people are still worth learning about, even if it's just a little bit. We learn from Eli Whitney about the dangers of having good intentions that can backfire. I mentioned the story a few days ago about the cotton gin. So yeah, pros and cons. Now let's make everything that's been updated in a greenish color. Let's see what that looks like. Oh yeah, that's right. Foreground and background. There we go. So these are the main updates, and that way they stand out. Well, actually, let's change that. Yes, that's going to be better. Just something so it stands out a little bit better. There are people in this world who are making horrible mistakes right now because they don't understand their history. I think that if a politician is to rule wisely, they should be required to have a good understanding of their history. They should be able to cite things in a moment. In my opinion, a politician should be required by law to have a good understanding of history. Here's why. There are people in government right now who are fascinated with the idea of acts that and I'm gonna have to be careful about what I say here, but acts that used to be considered unethical and even flat outright illegal. And now politicians don't care. They just conveniently forget all the reasons why the laws are there to begin with. One of those things is pork spending. Very, very bad. A lot of other ones is graft. Graft used to be illegal. Graft is now considered good politics. That's how we get monopolies. That's how we get tyrants in our local areas. That's how we kill industry. That's how we cause corruption. Politicians now are some of the richest people in the world. That used to not be the case. They used to be considered public servants. But now, now they're just overwhelmed with all the money that they have, all the power that they've accumulated for themselves. The warning signs are all throughout history. When that happens, you are going to eventually get to a point where the people revolt. And based upon history, There's some moments in history that become very, very dark when we get these sorts of things happening. Rome was a perfect example of what can happen. Another one that's less likely to be considered, but probably more logical in terms of what can happen in the modern day world, is the French Revolution. That one really has me unnerved, because during the French Revolution, there are some really awful things that took place. And by understanding how people can be riled up in terms of a mob, well, we're doomed to repeat it. And already, American cities have experienced a lot of violence. The history that we've read warns us about that. And now, people are blindly calling for violence in some cases. Well, not some, an ever-increasing amount. Dangerous stuff. Very destructive. We have to be able to put the brakes on it, but people don't know their history. So how can you reason with them if they don't understand? Hey, don't do this. Don't destroy your community. You're going to hurt people. People are going to get more violent. People are going to start starving soon. Soon you'll have a full-on revolution. People are not paying attention. And the warning signs are all there. All in black and white on their textbook, or maybe even with full color with all the paintings. Love to have some more diversity. 95% of history lessons is just about Europe, North Africa, and Middle East. I would love to learn a bit about South America or Asian history. I think that would be a good thing. Now, here's the problem. Good luck trying to find good resources on that. Oh, they exist. You know why we have so much history in Europe and North America? In the Middle East and whatnot? We recorded history. If you go over to Asia, a lot of Chinese historians didn't record effectively what happened. We're rediscovering it, and of which it's very hard to tell of what happened. There's conflicting reports. The Mongols give one report, the Chinese give another, the Japanese give another. The histories clash. And if you study the wrong version of it, you make one nation mad. You study a different one, you make another nation mad. That's why nobody really has a clear idea of which history is the correct one. There's conflicting reports. See, in Europe, there was a standard set about by Greek historians and followed up by Roman historians. You report the truth, and if you don't report the truth, well, that could get you in serious trouble. And so Rome required their historians, now some of them did not adhere to this, but they required their historians to be honest. A lot of historians also went out of their way to tell the truth. Those historians were less popular in their day, but in modern era, we hold their sources up to be far more authentic because they were truthful and they gave the facts and figures as to why. Being able to reason your argument is important, and a lot of Roman, Greek, and other European countries, they did that. South America didn't have a written language, so thus we don't have a good history of their world. All we have are relics, and some of those relics are changing how we used to perceive them. Maybe you heard, but recently they've been finding LiDAR scans of the jungles of South America. There was a historian, well, there was an adventurer who went through South America. He went down the Amazon River. He got lost, and he found 3 cities the size of London. Separate cities the size of London at the time, which was the biggest city in the world. When he got back to the coast, people called him a lunatic, an idiot, and he died without being able to prove his findings. Just like last year, they found that there are they've done LiDAR scans of the jungles, and they think that there actually were cities out there. What happened to them? We don't know. Nobody wrote it. The only historians that were there, only Europeans that were there who could have recorded it, were either executed or couldn't stay. And so the only recordings we have would have been native writings, and they don't have a written language. Or at least none that we've been able to find. When it comes to India, there's a lot of aggression in their caste system. And so thus some people groups were treated very poorly in terms of their history. And it's very hard to be able to tell what was true and what was not. It's one of the reasons why we don't report on Indian history as much. Now, some archaeologists think that we have figured out a little bit more about their culture, but it contradicts a bit of what Indian historians would say. We need evidence, and we have a culture of it in Europe, so thus our history endures far better. After finishing history, I would prefer to have a vague idea of what was going on around the world, and not super specific dates of battles and stuff from just one of 2 regions. I concur. There's a lot of historians as well within recent years that are really bad historians. It's a shame. There's a lot of activist historians. Those people do not have good history. And I got to have one of those historians a while back, and it didn't go so well because they said things that I could tell beyond a shadow of a doubt were false. And I mentioned that story the other day about how that turned out. I got vindicated, but never got justice. I have to go back and do another pass on the eyes. His eyes need to be, well, actually, no. That's it. The face is too full. He is supposed to be an older fella, and so his face can't be that thick. He needs to be slightly more angular, because he's supposed to be an older fella. It's good to study history. It's good to study it from many sources. In doing so, you can more easily find the truth. I don't like our education system. Our education system sucks. You learn a lot more on your own than through the education system. It's a shame because education costs so freaking much. I got my education just before the prices got way out of hand. And they were already getting out of hand. I was there when the education system as a whole was just not teaching as well as they used to. I remember going in thinking, wow, I'm going to learn a ton of stuff. And I learned more stuff from YouTube. I got confused in a class. No worries. YouTube will clarify it. And I became an early user of YouTube for education. And I continue to learn through YouTube rather than have to take classes. Now, there's some things you do have to take classes for. But I've learned enough from YouTube to actually justify career moves. That's something that that college was supposed to do, and it no longer does because the culture has changed so much. There, that's a little bit more accurate to who Milo is. Something about the eyes, though, is just slightly off. Oh yeah, they're too youthful looking. I have to add in the how the eyes start to sag like this. Data implants. Imagine getting rickrolled because somebody hacked your data implant. I can guarantee you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, those implants are going to be a curse. In fact, I think that the curse might be about the most dramatic that we've ever seen. Oh, it will be hugely devastating. Human innovation has consequences. It has severe consequences. You don't always know what that consequence is going to be until it happens. Never, ever, ever be a first adopter of something. We could focus more on school and soft stuff. Remember what I said the other day about struggle? What do you think that those implants would be? It's not struggle. It suddenly makes it, well, it takes away the struggle. You know, in the Bible, we learn about something called the mark of the beast. There's been many people who have debated as to what that actually would be. Mark of the beast is mentioned about as being one of the final acts of human corruption and defiance that takes place before the terrible, terrible events take place. It's a warning that is given, saying, beware the mark of the beast. And we don't know what it is. I really wish we did. There's been people who have made the claim that AI could be part of it. But I'm more inclined to believe, personally, that it is an implant. Humanity is worth saving, worth preserving. God died for us that we might endure. What happens if we're no longer human? What happens to us then? Do we receive that same level of pardon and forgiveness? Or is the mark of the beast that point of where rebellion becomes so bad that there is no more forgiveness for such people? Well, not necessarily no more forgiveness, but more like there's no more chances to escape, and that punishment is nigh. I've been thinking about this one a lot, because if you listen to what the creators of these chips are saying, they have some very wild humanistic worldviews. They got some destructive worldviews. Some things that they say that they want that is like, you guys are challenging the natural order of things in a way that everything else doesn't even compare. Why are we so determined to avoid labor? Why are we so determined to avoid, well, goodness? Why are we so determined to go down a path of humanism? I'm on Team Humanity against the AI, but I'm not a humanist. We gotta be careful of that stuff. I know a lot of people, to them, it's like a gimmick. It's like a joke. That stuff is getting very, very close to being real. The joke is over. Reality is setting in. I can guarantee you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, there's a curse that will come with implants that we have no idea what to even expect. It is horrifying, some of the things that Elon Musk has been saying. Eventually, we'll have to come to terms with it. Beware taking such a mark. It will require you to surrender your soul, and that's the part that is really unnerving. What happens if for a momentary pleasure or a momentary ease of life, we lose everything? What sort of people would we become? There will be people that adopt that technology. You're not going to see them happy, though. I mean, you'll see them momentarily happy. Oh, I can upload any movie to my head now. Oh, I can be able to augment my world in a moment. You know, I don't like looking at your face. I'm just going to have the onboard AI chip and my imagination just twist you around. I want to live in a cartoon world. Oh, I want to be able to have instant gratification, instant pleasures, instant everything. That's pretty scary. No, you can't be optimistic about that stuff. See, Jersey, that's the big deception. What happens if when we are constantly looking for ways to avoid living the life that we've been placed here for? That's a form of rebellion. That's a destructive act that will hurt many people. You can't be optimistic if something dark is on the horizon. Because you can only deny the darkness for so long before it's like, wait a minute, folks, this is dark. The benefits are not there. It requires something horrible. It requires you to sacrifice The very thing that builds character. Struggle. See, what you just mentioned about is you want the ease that it brings. That's not ease. That creates a whole range of problems. And, well, sadly, a lot of people, that's enough. Like, well, I don't care about the potential problems. I want the benefits. What happens if they get the benefits and suddenly it's not what they were promised? Let me explain as to why I'm so pessimistic about this. There are people in our culture who have made horrible changes to their life. We don't hear about them a whole lot because we don't kind of want to hear about it. There are people who have maintained immense physical harm to their body, and there's no way for them to correct it. They destroyed themselves. And all the warning signs were there. Don't go down this path. Family members pleaded, like, don't do it. And they still did it. And they're physically destroyed. They're forever living with pain and suffering. The warning signs were all there. Whenever you try and challenge the nature that has been placed into this world, this whole world was made to function a certain way. Whenever we try and upset that, whenever we try and hack it, people get hurt. And I used to not think that. I really didn't. But something changed in that sense. People started pushing the most outlandish sort of innovations, and the people that were around suddenly started saying, I'm actually suffering. And society's like, we don't want to hear about that. Just learn to live with it. And it's like, wait a minute, no, you guys hurt these people. I can't look the other way anymore. They promise that they're going to change everything, and they're saying it with a smile. They're saying the future looks great, when all they've done is they've made a nightmare. They took all the warnings that the past gave us of beware of a machine controlling you. Now that's seen as a good thing. Beware of people poisoning you. That's now a good thing. Look out for people trying to genetically engineer you. Now that's a good thing. Watch out for a chip that can control you. Oh, well, now that's a good thing. Notice what's happening? All the dystopian films of the past are now considered a positive future by some, but not the majority. If you ask the average person what they think, the majority of them would say they're scared stiff. Most people now are very scared of what people are willing to do. Because if people are willing to make themselves a cyborg, are they going to force us to have to accept them? Or are they going to say, oh no, that's fine, we'll just experiment over here? No, within recent years, they've done some really shady things. It makes me think it's not going to go well for a lot of people, and it's going to be harm that we experience more than benefit. All this because recent decades have kind of shown us that a lot of things have an unintended consequence, and we don't usually consider that consequence until it's too late. Really? Nothing wrong with Genetic updates. Progressive, still nothing wrong with fixing imperfections. But at what cost? At what cost does it become too much? At what cost do we suddenly learn, dang, there's actually a reason why things were this way. There's a reason why things had to be set up and maintained to be like the old ways were. When do we look at it and say, we just crossed a line? Is there a line that can be crossed? See, part of the problem of progression, of having a progressive mindset, where do you draw the line? For some people, they're like, okay, we have humanity over here, okay? Happy little humanity. Okay, look, he even has a wife. They got little kids. Wonderful. For some people, this is all they want. Someone comes along and says, hey, we'll help you by replacing your need for animals with machines. Oh, now it's going to be something different. Now you're going to have a cell phone that allows you to communicate. Oh, look over here. Now you're going to have computers that are going. That's a terrible looking computer. Okay, I'm using a very simple brush. I'm trying to do this fast. Now you're going to have a computer that will allow you to do sophisticated tasks that have never been even contemplated in the past. See, this is good progression. This is saying, hey, we're going to innovate. We're going to improve the human experience. What happens when it goes wrong is this. Hey, you don't like your situation? Is your hand cramping up? Just cut it off. We can make a robotic hand that will replace your hand. Just get rid of your hand for this. Oh, we got another option. Is your heart potentially going to cause issues? We're going to create a device that is an artificial heart that can be replaced, and you'll be able to have constant upgrades to this, so that way you'll never have to worry about your heart giving out. Oh, you know what? Your brain doesn't even need to function the way that in the same way that it used to, because we'll give you a chip. And this thing will allow us to send you updates so you can get smarter. See, back in the day, this used to be sci-fi. And now, there are people who are actually getting themselves hurt in order to make this stuff happen. These things over here were all additions to your life. This is where you actually have to harm yourself to get it. That's where I have a big issue with this. Technology should be kept at a distance. You should be able to drop it, especially if it starts to become bad. What happens when you start to impact yourself with it? By actually harming yourself. For this stuff to happen, you have to hurt. You have to scar and maim. There is no going back. Especially when it starts to impact people at a DNA level. Very dangerous. What if we make a mistake that isn't known for a generation or two? Think how many people got hurt. A technology improves you from the outside in. The moment you try and go from the inside out, ooh, good luck. That's never going to go well. Every attempt I've seen in the last couple of decades has been bad. Every attempt I've seen has caused death and destruction. What if we could change our DNA a little so we could have like special extra things in our lungs that let us breathe underwater like a fish? Wouldn't that be cool? Or like have an additional protection in our blood that kills cancer cells? It's not immoral to fix. What if it is? What if it is? Would you be willing to be the first one to find out? I'm not a pessimist. It may seem like that, but I'm not a pessimist. Nor am I an optimist. I'm a realist. I realized this, play on words there, I realized this when I was younger. And I had to come to terms with the fact that some bad things were taking place in the world. I wanted to be hopeful. I really did. I have an innate desire to want to see things improve, to see things with hope in it. I keep mentioning about that constantly. I'm like, where's the hope factor in what it is that you're making? I believe we have to have hope. Well, what happens when you suddenly have hope and optimism and you're met with darkness and you're met with the realization that there are people out there that mean pure evil? Such people, when darkness arrives like that, you become either a pessimist or a realist. A realist wants to still see hope on the horizon, or still can see hope on the horizon, but understands that darkness is an ever malevolent force that's trying to destroy us. If someone came up to you and said, "Hey, you know what? We'll give you the ability to run faster than ever before. All you have to do is remove your legs, and we'll give you robotic legs." You want to be the best athlete in the world? Just take these steroids. We've already been doing this stuff. And you know what? Every attempt has hurt people. Every attempt has caused immense pain and suffering. And it's very, very few people seem to realize this. The more you see it, the harder it is to ignore. Having optimism is different than having hope. I don't trust mankind. Mankind has caused some horrible things to take place. I trust God. God's in charge. God will protect. God will defend. But he'll also allow for evil to have its day. In part because he wants people to choose him. He doesn't want to force people to choose him. And as such, there's going to be a lot of people in this world that choose to rebel. And part of it is seen in humanism. This desire to want to become our own deities in that sense. Some people that think that, hey, this flesh is imperfect. We can make people live 1,000 years. Do you know that actually has been talked about among some people in the scientific world? They think they figured it out. They think they know what it is that triggers long life. Not immortality. That's impossible. But they think that they've figured out how to make people live longer. Sounds good, right? Until you start meeting, or once you start hearing these people firsthand, and you start hearing about why they want to try and make this happen, and you realize These people are dark. These people are scary. There's a professor that I got to meet who was a big supporter of a lot of these innovations. He was not a nice man. He hated everyone and everything. And so it's like, do I really want to trust you with this sort of stuff? I got to meet a student who was a big supporter of augmentation of the human body. And he would say all sorts of grand ideas of what would happen if he had the ability to augment this or augment that. It sounded too good to be true in many ways. Long life, better stamina, sounded like a good thing. Then you start realizing what you have to sacrifice to pull that sort of stuff off. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. That's dark. One of the reasons why this stuff is so dangerous is that it would require test subjects to get things started. And there was an experiment that happened a couple of years ago in which they replaced somebody's face. It didn't go well. Another person who wanted to try and figure out how to augment a person's skull. And it didn't go so well. Another person who got implants into their face. And now they look like a monster. Augmentation is darkness. It has roots in a very evil worldview that views people as expendable parts in the journey to, we'll say, immortality, because a lot of them will actually come down to that as like their final end goal, which makes sense. A lot of people want to be immortal, but they don't want to find God to actually become immortal. Rather, they want to find scientific solutions to immortality. And that's where the darkness really grows and gets worse and worse with time. DNA modification is like a gift of Prometheus, fire, future generations. No sacrifices is needed, except some money maybe. Just curious, Jersey, you don't have to be specific about the actual range, but are you in what type of school are you in? Are you in high school? Are you in college? Are you after college? Just kind of curious about where you fall on that scale. Because some things are learned in different places. For me, my high school preparation didn't really wake me up to a lot of these problems until I hit college. A couple things hit me in college, and a couple things have hit me after college, and that will kind of change how I approach the story. It's actually very interesting. I should actually probably think about giving an in-depth discussion about the things I learned at college that made me a realist, but I might have to save that story because that's actually a fairly in-depth narrative. I'm going to get myself some more water. Be right back. Not in college. I have lots of time left. Oh, okay, no worries. No, you don't have to tell me that. I do not need to. I just was kind of curious about the story that I could draw from. Let me put it to you this way. This part of the image right here, I think this is an important one to think about. Here in this image, Milo has a journey that he's been going through. He has had a hard go of it. He has experienced a trip to Europe in which he got to see a horrible act take place, and it made him wary of things in a different way. That it helped him to grow up in that sense, and it shell-shocked him. Later on, he ended up learning the struggles of what it means to have responsibilities and opportunities that get lost, and the requirements that are given to people, and the responsibility that you're going to have to really lean into. Learning about loss and learning about how to look towards the future. Every stage of life has a lesson that we can learn from. But there's something else. In that journey, we start to slowly come to terms with the realization that this world has some very dark elements to it. We should not know all those dark elements. By all means, the more you study darkness, the more real it becomes. The more you study light, the more you start to see hope. This is an important thing. You have to be able to turn towards light, kind of like how Milo stays focused on the fire. But there's something else out there. Sometimes there's something that those around us are aware of, but we are not. We can be focused on the hope and optimism for the future, but it doesn't deny the fact that there are a lot of dark things that are crouching and waiting to pounce. When I was in college, I learned about something very terrible. I will not mention what it was. Something very terrible that happens to people in their early adult years. It's a life choice that ends up destroying them. You'll probably hear about it before long, and at which point you'll have to be aware of it. But it's not something I can really cover online. It's a dark creature, you could say, that is crouching in our society, crouching in the shadows of the spiritual realm, or crouching in the very corners of our own heart. The older you get, the more you become aware of the danger that's beyond. You stop focusing on the area that you're currently at, and you start to broaden your vision. See, I can say some things with great certainty because I've gotten to see it, because I've gotten to experience it, because I've seen what people say, and later on get to see their actions. You will get there one day. You will have to wrestle with this. It's good to have optimism. But eventually, you'll have to make the decision of whether or not it stays optimistic and becomes realism or becomes pessimism. I can promise you When you reach the age of 30, 25 is probably more likely. When you reach the age of 25, you're going to have a reckoning. Do not adopt the trends of the world until you reach that point. This is my biggest warning. Do not adopt the trends of this world until you reach the age of 25. Then you are going to be wiser and able to navigate things. Because when you reach 25, something will transpire. It's 25, 30, around that range, but when you reach 25, this really starts to begin. You start thinking as a man. You start, or for our female audience, you start thinking as a woman. You start to see the world with clear vision. There was a little kid at Disney who came up to his mother and held up an item that we sold. I won't mention what the item was because it could potentially cause issues. He held up an item to his mother and said, "What is this? Can we buy it?" And his mother looked at it and her eyes widened. And she said, No, put that back. Don't think about that ever again, okay? We're going to be leaving. Why? What's the problem? Don't worry, I'll tell you when you're older. Because some things we're not meant to know right away. Some things we just have to trust and say, the older folks understand something. They've seen something. There's a reason why we're supposed to avoid it. Kind of like the other day when I mentioned, yesterday when I mentioned the story about putting my finger on the stove and figuring out that it burns. A lot of people have some information that they can't fully expand upon. It doesn't mean that information doesn't exist. It means that it could be very damaging. When you reach the age of 25 or 30, you become one of two things. You lose your optimism, and you become either a pessimist or a realist. I know almost nobody who is an optimist anymore. Every last one of them have become one of those two things, pessimist or optimist. Those are what we're told it is. But instead it's pessimism and realism. Optimism's gone. You can try and be hopeful, but that's part of realism. So before you reach that age, be careful of the trends. Be careful of what people promise because, here we go. Be careful what people promise because there might be something that you don't quite know is going on. When I say that there's some really dark things that are happening with the brain chips and whatnot, it's because I actually am fairly well versed in the world of science and research. I can't mention what my job is, but let's just say I actually have gotten to hear some statements on stuff like that, which makes me all the more wary about it. It's one of the reasons why I was so wary about AI. I have a tech background. I have a coding background. And I've worked with researchers in different ways. I know how a lot of them think. I know a lot of their goals. I know an engineer who is working at a very big job in the country. And I know some of the things that he said that he wanted to do with some of this technology. I want to mention this because you have to be wary. A lot of people are going to come along and promise wonderful things. Just get this chip and upload everything. Just cut off this part of you and you'll be stronger. Avoid that stuff. take this pill. It'll make you better. No. No. We actually have a viewer who took a pill because people said this will make him better. And it started to destroy him. And he had to cast it aside because like, this thing's hurting me. Thankfully, he did it early on. I had a roommate who didn't. He had a father who was in the medical field. And his father said, hey, I got an experimental drug that is sanctioned by everyone I work with. We want to test it on you. And we want to see how it works. And it destroyed him. And so in order to fix it, they gave him more pills. He is a shell of the man that he could have been. He fried his brain on pills. There's going to be people that come along in your life that will offer a pill, that will offer a chip, that will offer a drug of some kind and say, don't worry, all the pain and frustration, we'll let it just disappear. We'll take over for you. Don't think, don't struggle, don't strain. No, we're meant to struggle. We're meant to strain. We're human beings. Don't surrender that. It may sound cool because our media makes us think that this stuff can be cool and exciting. But what happens when we suddenly reach the age of 25 and suddenly we have a gut-wrenching yell that some of my peers have had? That gut-wrenching scream of, what have I done? I'm warning you about this not because I want you to think about this stuff. We all will reach that point. I've reached that point a couple of times. Thankfully, I've avoided a lot of things. I've not avoided others. If I could go back, I'd go back and slap myself across the face and say, avoid this, avoid that, because I would have been better. But there's some people, they sabotaged everything and they've not been able to recover. Hopefully you take that to heart. By the way, folks, if any of you are watching on one of the platforms where you can like and dislike the stream, if you find anything of merit around here, either in the stories or the philosophy or the drawings or whatnot, would you consider mentioning either with a like or a dislike what you think? There's sometimes where I look at a video and the likes and dislikes actually are way different than I expect. Yesterday, for example, I was surprised that we actually had far more viewers than it seemed. So I don't know if they watched afterwards or if they were earlier, but it was interesting to me to get to see that. And I appreciate getting to know who's flesh and blood. There's a guy that I got to meet. Who told me a story about an event that I thought for certain I knew well. He got to see it from a different angle. He got to see it from a round point of view. He understood it well, and he got to see what very few people in America got to see. He came back, and he was never the same man. There were some things that he had learned and seen that, well, that made a lot of people upset. Now, I listened to the guy. I actually give him more stock in some of his claims than what a lot of other people have said. And it was different. It was very different from anything I'd ever heard of before. And it made me question a lot of the things I had supported up until that point. It made me realize there's another story that takes place with everything. There's another side that we have to be aware of, because there might be propaganda that's taking place. And in recent years, that story that I had heard from the guy has been solidified by other stories that have come out. I no longer can ignore them. Now I view it as truth. I didn't at first. I doubted it. It didn't make sense to me. Like, how can this guy be accurate in his claims? And then it got verified, and more people came out and said, no, that is indeed what happened. It made a lot of people very upset, because we were told one thing and it ended up being another. I wonder what sort of things we'll experience that we'll believe for certain was one way, and then we learn later on in life that we were wrong for believing it. We'll have made many life choices based upon that. Many life choices that are going to come back and bite us one day. Some people will double down on that. Others will avoid talking about it like the plague. Stand by just a second. Gonna double check something. Want to double check something. Refreshing. Sometimes Restream glitches on me. I want to just double check that. Okay, yeah. It looked like everything froze there for a moment. Anyway. So what's something you heard at one point that later on you found out that you suddenly have doubts about? Something that you're like, oh, for certain it's this way, and you defended it. You shouted people down, and you're like, nope, you're wrong, and you defend it to the end, so to speak. And then you find out that you're incorrect for that. How many people are going to accept that and say, you know what? I gotta start questioning that now. Not many. I mean, I myself, it took a long time for me to come to terms with that sort of stuff. To be able to look at someone and say, you know what? I want to believe that people are honorable, but I can no longer believe that. Even people that I've supported for a long time, I'm like, I can't do it anymore. Doesn't mean I'm going to immediately go the opposite direction, but it means that I'm going to have to be a lot more skeptical. I'm going to have to be a lot more, you could say, pessimistic. or realistic. Realizing that people are people, and some people are going to tell you the truth, others are going to tell you a lie. Ethics should drive you. Morals should drive you. The source of truth is found in Scripture. I adhere to Scripture first, history second. The news is dead last. Being able to doubt is not bad. I mentioned that before. Doubt is fine. Doubt helps to protect us from making huge mistakes. But eventually we have to come to terms with that something is going to have to be true. And where do you draw the line for that? How do you draw the line for it? Jump scare. Indeed. Instant suspense. Better pull up an image of a horse leg, because I want to make sure I do this right. Aha! I knew I was messing something up. It's like making this too human-like. I've been drawing too many people as of late. Stand about here. Yeah, so it's right height. It's just wrong for the base and wrong for down here. And the muscles tend to be like this. Okay, it's too muscular. Let's tone it back. Silhouetting a character like this can actually help with figuring out the pose a lot better. You can play around with it and make it look correct a little bit faster than having to make all the shapes. And then you go back and you make the shapes afterwards. But like the actual measurements and whatnot. You're silhouetting it for accuracy. Especially if you're out of practice with something. Like this. The hindquarters. I actually have forgotten that hindquarters for the horse actually comes to about here, and then it actually starts to extend down. By the way, folks, if you have an interest in Milo, in some way, shape, or form, if you ever feel comfortable about it, just mention it. Somehow. I don't know what the interest is for it. I have the story figured out. I've been trying to write it. I'm trying to get it done. But if you have any interest in kind of seeing this story come about, it'd be great to at least, occasionally see a comment on that. You don't have to be elaborate about it, but, just every now and again, if you do see something, you're like, hey, I would like to see this or maybe something else. It helps to at least know if I'm doing things right, because there's a lot of confusion with that in our modern day. So many platforms like to pretend like they know exactly how audiences think, and I doubt that. I think audiences have much more sophisticated palates than what the streaming services say, and so I'm making blind guesses based upon what I myself would have liked to see. Some people are going to probably agree with that, with a lot of the things I do. There's probably going to be people that cannot stand it. I'm not necessarily going to change everything for the people that can't stand it, but it is going to be something where I'll at least start taking it into consideration so I don't make some regular mistakes. You was a guy that I got to meet who thought very lowly of the people he was in his audience. And I confronted him about it, and I said, this is... Now, he had a whole lot of people that were stating their opinions, and it finally just grated on him, and he just cut it all off, period. And as a result, it made a lot of people very upset. And in his view, everybody else was the problem. He was the poor downtrodden streamer who had done nothing wrong. When in reality, he had done a whole lot wrong, and people were making it very clear to him. And, well, he didn't want to hear it. I never want to make that same mistake. Sure, there may be... Most people maybe don't care one way or the other. But if you do have any sort of thoughts or whatnot, I do welcome them. Because I don't want to fall into the same vice that he did. I want to try and make sure to do things the correct way. And in our current age of streaming, that's sometimes easier said than done. Mostly because of confusion. You make it an idea, you make a plan, and then it doesn't pan out. And you're like, dang, I wonder why it didn't pan out. And getting to hear that information on the occasion really does work wonders. Horses are incredible creatures. I'm not necessarily very good with horses. The only horse I ever really rode, I ended up riding side saddle on, and unintentionally when we got attacked by an elk. Yeah, real story. Elk attacked, and the horse jumped to the side and ended up riding side saddle for probably about 100 feet before I ended up having to somersault off of it. And miraculously, I broke my finger, but did not sustain any serious damage. Although I forevermore have like a nail that refuses to grow appropriately as a result of that. That's the kind of the long and short of my horse experiences. I'm much better with dogs and cats and whatnot. Horses, I'm sure I would be just fine if I was around them more often. And just doesn't, not too many occasions for that. This has been good improvement. I was really not liking how the image was looking before tonight, and this is... it's looking so much better. Definitely got a long ways to go, but the process has begun, and I think we're going to be... We're getting close to wrapping up. We'll go for 2.5 hours, so it means another 15 minutes, and then we'll call it there. Okay, something glitched on me. Something glitched. Stand by. Computer's thinking. Save that just in case. Okay. Okay, actually, I think we're going to be ending it right now. This is something that has happened a couple of times. My Wacom has glitched on me. This does not happen very often. It usually means that there's an update. But that means I have to stop and come back to this later. So, never mind. It'll be 2 hours and 15 minutes tonight. Well, it's not a bad improvement. Compared to earlier, I mean, the two main characters right there. Big improvements. I like that. Are you going to be streaming more this week? Yes. Quite a bit this week. We should be back tomorrow night. This week it's going to be only this artwork until it's done. It's going to be, well, I take that back. It's not only this one. There's going to be some animation as well. But that's mostly going to be done on the side because the scene's so big, I can't actually get it to stream anymore. So we're going to be focusing on this. But it's mostly the same sort of stuff. It's evening streams because I work during the day. Not tomorrow, though. Tomorrow is a holiday for us. And so that means I will be streaming tomorrow night. And then on Tuesday and Wednesday, that one's kind of like a give or take. I don't know what usually will happen. Sometimes I come to Tuesday and I'm just beat. And so I take a night off for that. But this is the goal. Try and get this thing done. And I got to try and get into the swing of working more as time goes on. Now, I've had a very productive last month. But it hasn't rendered the same amount of success that I would have liked to have seen. This last month, I've ended up working on stream or on side projects a total of, where is that? Right over here. I've been trying to log this stuff better. This last month has been 150 hours of work on stuff for Castercraft or streaming. And it needs to be even more than that. This is not a, this is not a side hobby. Ugh. Yeah. Last month was the least amount of gaming we have done on the channel. That's actually commendable. To have that, we had a total of 8 hours of game streams. It used to be 40. That's improvement, folks. I know some people would prefer the game stuff, but the artwork is the stuff that will create the evergreen stuff that will last for a much longer amount of time. And so I'm glad. Things are going well enough, and I look forward to seeing how things continue to shape up moving forward. But either way, spend about 100 hours per stream that per month I've been working on this stuff. Hey, greetings there, Bastion. I've also started my classes. Hello. Indeed, Bastion. And good night. Rest well, sir. Hope your classes go well. And be sure to tell us sometime about what your favorite class is. After you've gotten a chance to experience it a little bit. On that note, folks, we're going to be bringing this stream to an end. Let us see if there's somebody we can go and raid, because right now I think there's some people live on the Twitch side. Do raid? Yep. Well, we actually do have people to go and raid today, including Pantheon, who was here earlier today. So we actually have that ability. All right. Well, on that note, folks, have a very pleasant evening and morning, everybody. Be civil to one another. Whether you're optimistic, pessimistic, or realistic. Until next time, folks, have a very pleasant evening. Starting the raid. To people on the YouTube and Rumble side, we will not be raiding. Of course, for YouTube, but Rumble, there's just one, so it doesn't really, it's not really something I'm going to stress about. Anyway, till next time, folks.